What if I told you that the most important artist cinema has ever produced is somehow underrated? He made millions of people laugh, cry, and think, all without uttering a single word. He's arguably the greatest actor who ever lived, and he only really ever played one character his whole career. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Charles Spencer Chaplin, aka Charlie Chaplin, aka Lil Tramp. Chaplin pretty much took this young, burgeoning silent film industry and put it on the map. To many people, he was cinema itself. People didn't go to the movies to watch a movie. To them, Chaplin was the movies. That there was no movies. He was the entire industry. I mean, Chaplin was so ahead of his time. The idea that an actor can write, direct, produce, and edit his own film is unheard of even today. His work and legacy transcends cinema and enters like this world historic dimension. Actors come and go, but Charlie Chaplin is simply unforgettable. So today there'll be no lessons, no fancy film techniques, just a story about the greatest filmmaker who ever lived. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. The year was 1889. Not a car on the road nor a plane in the sky. The British Empire was at the peak of their power. The Industrial Revolution was in full swing, and in South London, a man was born. Charles Spencer Chaplin. The story of Charlie Chaplin is a story of the American dream. He was born into crushing poverty. His mother, Lily Harley, was an actress and singer, and his dad was also a stage performer, singer, vocalist, but he was pretty much a deadbeat alcoholic who abandoned Charlie when he was just 3 years old. His mom suffered from mental illness, so Charlie Chaplin pretty much grew up in the streets. He was in and out of the workhouse. If anybody doesn't know what the workhouse is, this is like some medieval relic from the pre-industrial age. And it was pretty much a prison for poor people. If you didn't have money to eat and live, you would go to the workhouse and they would provide you with 3 meals and some shelter at the expense of your life. The workhouse was worse than starving or living on the streets. They would take you in, put you in a uniform, shave your head. You work 10-hour days. The food was terrible. You were subject to beatings. We're talking about some Charles Dickens shit here. Please, sir, can I have some more? That is the workhouse. If the state was going to give you any relief, they made sure they were going to shame you to death for it. While Charlie admits his experience in the workhouse did a lot of psychological damage to him, it also was the source of a lot of inspiration for the Tramp character. And while his parents didn't provide a lot for him growing up, he did learn a lot about performance from his parents. He would watch his mother rehearse all day, singing and dancing all over the house as she cleaned. And there was one famous account when Charlie was 5 years old. His mother was on stage performing and he was backstage and she lost her voice. So the stage manager just threw Charlie on stage. And because Charlie had been watching his mother rehearse all week, he knew every word of the song. So he started singing and everybody erupted in applause. And it was his first ever performance. His first gig as a steady performer came at age 10. He was in a dancing troupe called the 8 Lancashire Lads. He did manage to book a couple acting roles throughout his teenage years, the most notable being Billy the Page Boy in a production of Sherlock. And it was very popular. He went on 3 nationwide tours. His performance was singled out and received great reviews. But Chaplin wasn't satisfied. He wanted to be a comic. He wanted to do sketches and be a vaudeville star. To anybody that doesn't know, the vaudeville was the place to be in the turn of the 20th century. This was before radio and film. The vaudeville, in British, they were called music halls. It was pretty much a variety show. You would go to these events and there were multiple acts, jugglers, acrobatics, comics, dancers, and they just put them all in the same bill. Sometimes they had a host. So this was the dominant form of entertainment for adults at the time. And at age 18, Charlie, with the help of his older brother, Sidney, landed a job at the prestigious Karno Company. The Karno Company was a comedy troupe founded by the great Fred Karno. So I'm going to go off on a tangent here. Fred Karno was such an important figure in entertainment and cinema. He's very unknown. A lot of people don't know about him, but he's pretty much the guy who discovered Charlie Chaplin. That was his stick later on in life. But this man was the originator of slapstick comedy. He was originally a circus clown and acrobat, and he developed this style of comedy that was very physical and pure visual. No dialogue at all. It was a very clever way to get around censorship laws at the time. You couldn't just say what you want on stage. So he developed this pure visual style of comedy that contemporary audiences completely gobbled up. One person described it as well-orchestrated, highly skilled chaos. Fred Karno's comics were the best in town, and he became a juggernaut in the industry. In 1910, he had 32 sketches touring nationwide. He directed, he performed, he managed acts. He was Charlie Chaplin's first manager. He owned a huge prop warehouse that was called the Fun Factory. It eventually became a Pink Floyd studio, which is kind of cool. Now, at first, Karno wasn't thrilled with Chaplin as a prospect. He lacked the height for lead roles. He wasn't very good looking. And he called him a pale, puny, sullen-looking youngster who looked much too shy to do good in theater. But after a couple small supporting roles, it didn't take long for him to make a name for himself, and he easily became one of Karno's best comics. Karno even placed him in his starting lineup in the troupe that toured the US, which was his top comics. And it was in one of these tours where Charlie would eventually be discovered. But I want to talk about Fred Karno for a second. It turns out that the innovative new visual comedy that he developed was perfect for the new burgeoning silent film industry that was happening in America. And as soon as his comics toured the US, they were all poached to work in the new film industry. Those early silent films were full of Karno talent like Chaplin and Stan Laurel. Meanwhile, Fred Karno failed to adapt, and he didn't want to go cinema. He stuck to his vaudeville acts, and in about 5 or 10 years, all the vaudevilles would dry up. Cinema and radio completely took over, and he went bankrupt. A lot of his old actors that worked in the Karno Company were huge stars in Hollywood now. They tried to get him a job as an AD, but you know, this guy was the boss, the king, his whole career. He just couldn't play second fiddle like that. So he was quickly fired in a couple months. The guy who was on top of the comedy world now was completely broke and forgotten. That is the way of the entertainment industry. You're up, but then you're down. As soon as Chaplin and Stan Laurel found out about Fred Karno's fate and his financial situation, they all chipped in a fund and got him a liquor license so he can earn a living. I like that. So one night when Chaplin was touring the US, it was a show in New York. The Karno Company was presenting one of their repertoire hits, A Night in the Music Hall. This was a play within a play. It incorporated a lot of faux audience members. Chaplin was one of these. He played a character called the Inebriate Swell. I don't even know how to say that. The Inebriate Swell. Jeez. And he killed it. This is one of his most iconic non-Tramp roles. He played the drunk guy so good. And sitting in attendance was Max Sennett. This was a silent film producer for the Keystone Film Company. Now, at the time, the silent film industry was in its infancy. These films didn't feature synchronized sound, so we call them silent films, but that's a historic term. At the time, they were just called films. And this Karno slapstick style of comedy seemed perfect for the new medium. And many Karno comics defected to work for the new film industry, including Chaplin. He was contacted by Max Sennett to work for Keystone. They were offering him $150 a week, which was a lot more than what he was making, so he defected. Now, a lot of people didn't like this. They viewed silent films as gimmicks. It wasn't real art. Chaplin wasn't even particularly a fan of the Keystone brand of comedy, calling it rough and rumble. But he understood the exposure and the publicity opportunity. These films were getting a lot of views. So in his own words, 1 year at that racket and I'll come back an international vaudeville star. And now when Chaplin landed in LA and met Max Sennett, he was shocked at how young Chaplin was. He wasn't even sure if it was the right guy. He thought he was getting an experienced, middle-aged, roughneck, comic of the music hall type. Not this young, baby-faced little boy. So it took him a little bit to finally get a part, but he finally made his film debut. And this was Charlie Chaplin's first time in a movie. It was called Making a Living. He plays a character called the Swindler. This was the rival of the other character played by Henry Lerman, which was a reporter. He steals a camera and tries to sell it to the newspaper and play it off as his own. They're also fighting for a girl. There's a classic silent film fight. Now, Charlie hated the film. He thought some of his best gags were cut out because the actor who played the reporter, Henry Lerman, he was also the director, and he was kind of getting jealous of Chaplin shining. And Lerman admitted this. He was jealous. He thought Chaplin knew too much. Hater. But it did get good reviews. Especially his part was singled out. There's a review. I'm going to read it. It said, "The clever player who takes the role of the nervy and very nifty sharper in this picture is a comedian of the first water. One of nature's own naturals." So Making a Living was cute, it was well received, but it would be in his next film where history was truly made. Chaplin would stumble into a character that was so hilarious, it would catapult him to global superstardom and transform him to the richest, most powerful person in Hollywood. It all started when Sennett was working on Mabel's Strange Predicament. This was a film starring Mabel Normand, and he needed some quick gags. So he told Charlie to put on some wardrobe and comedy makeup. Anything will do. So Charlie was in the dressing rooms picking out wardrobe. He wanted everything to be a contradiction. Small bowler hat, big floppy shoes, tight waistcoat with big baggy pants. And he remembered that Sennett thought he would be much older, so he threw on a mustache, but it was one of those toothbrush mustaches which didn't hide a lot of his facial expressions. And of course, the bamboo cane. Now, Charlie mentions that he had no idea of the character, but as soon as he put that wardrobe on, it made him feel the person he was. And by the time he walked on set, a legend was born. Now, originally, Sennett just wanted Charlie for one scene to play a drunk guy walking into the lobby. But as soon as Charlie performed, Sennett could not stop laughing. The drunk guy is something that Charlie probably played the best. I mean, this was very reminiscent of his Karno acts. He had been doing this for years. The drunk guy is literally Charlie's specialty. And Sennett thought it was so funny that he just changed the whole movie up and included Charlie in every single scene. And there's large parts of that film that's unedited, no cuts, just Charlie Chaplin killing it. While Mabel's Strange Predicament was the first time Charlie plays the Tramp, it wasn't his first appearance on screen. That honor goes to Kid Auto Races at Venice. This was Charlie's next film, and while Mabel's Strange Predicament was shot first, this film would which also featured the Tramp, would actually be released first. So this is technically the first time people are seeing the Tramp character. And let me tell you, you could not get a better debut than this film. After all the great films Charlie Chaplin has made, Kid Auto Races is still one of my favorite Chaplin films because it's such an easy watch. It has a very simple premise. The whole thing plays like a newsreel. These reporters are covering this push car race, and the Tramp is being a nuisance, looking for attention, can't stop getting in the shot. Funny stuff. It's so simple but hilarious, and the film is very historic in nature. Not only because it's the first time we see the Tramp on screen, but it was also the first time the public ever saw a movie camera and a camera operator on screen. The film breaks the fourth wall, and we actually see a camera guy in the shot. This would be the first time the public ever saw a movie camera on screen before. Some people had never even seen a camera before. So very, very historic film. I love it. And it's also the perfect debut. We see this Tramp character that would become a global icon, and we actually have on film the public's first reactions to the character. The push car race was a real event, so them sticking the Tramp in there and watching the public react to the Tramp, just an amazing, poetic debut. Once he put on that Tramp costume, he swore he would never take it off, and he pretty much didn't. Chaplin played the same character his whole career, which I find incredible. I want to talk about Chaplin's acting style and what made him so magnetic. I mentioned this before. The Keystone comedy had this reputation of being rough and rumble. A lot of the actors were always fighting, and they just seemed to be constantly moving very fast all the time. Chaplin acted with a slower pace. He was a lot more subtle, but a lot more detailed. He put a lot more emphasis on character and personality, displaying a diverse array of emotions. He wasn't such a one-trick pony. Of course, his bread and butter was pantomime, slapstick. He had an amazing, extraordinary ability to articulate his body in all kinds of ways. A lot of times he would focus on just one part of the body at a time, whether it be his hands, his head, his neck, his legs, the way he walked, his butt. Just hypnotic to watch. It's like watching a ballet dancer. Chaplin was elegant, detailed, spontaneous, just amazing improviser with incredible timing. Just the right move at the right time. Watching Chaplin move is like watching Messi play soccer. Just everything he does, the way he falls, the way he walks. He had all these different kind of walks with his bow leg. And whether it be acting, dancing, roller skating, sliding down a flagpole, playing the violin, Chaplin seemed to be able to do anything with superhuman ability and ease. As Chaplin began to learn more and more about filmmaking, he believed that he can direct and create these scenarios better than the Keystone directors. And he started bumping heads with a lot of the people there, like Sennett and Lehman. He would get very mad when they wouldn't take his character suggestions. As a matter of fact, I read that Sennett was on the verge of firing him, but the front office kept clamoring for more Chaplin films. He was the studio's most popular performer. When his contract was up for renewal, he was asking for $1,000 a week. Sennett refused, so Chaplin left to SNA, which promised him $12.50 a week and way more creative control. So while the Tramp may have been born at Keystone, at SNA he would mature and become an adult. That's it for now. Stay tuned for part 2 of my Chaplin series.